This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, and welcome to our webinar today on ESD's Global New York State Trade Expansion Program. I am your moderator, Jenny Alton, from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. This webinar is hosted by the International Trade Department of the New York Small Business Development Center. And we have with us today, Catherine Bamberger, International Trade Specialist for Empire State Development. Also with us is Dr. Mercedes Sanchez-Moore, our own Director of the NYSBDC International Trade Initiative, and Antonio Rodriguez, Senior International Trade Manager for ESD. So you know, we are recording today. We will share links to a PDF copy of the slides and the recording in a follow-up email. Attendees are muted and will not be on camera. Your chats will only be visible to me and our presenters today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A box as they come up. You can open Zoom's Q&A box from the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we will address questions throughout the presentation when Catherine takes some pauses. So with that, I will turn the time over to Dr. Mercedes Sanchez-Moore, our Director of International Trade.
Thank you, Jenny, for your kind introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. I am Dr. Mercedes Sanchez-Moore, Director of International Trade of the New York Small Business Development Center. The New York SBDC is a partnership of the U.S. Small Business Administration, SUNY, the City University of New York State, higher education institutions, and the private sector. The SBDC provides one-to-one business advisement, training, and research in support of entrepreneurship and economic development for the state of New York. The International Trade Initiative is a special program within the New York SBDC network, which is housed and part of the SUNY network of 20 regional centers and 72 outreach and satellite offices. 98% of the population in the state of New York is within 30 minutes of an SBDC service location. The New York SBDC International Trade Initiative supports SBDC clients statewide with expertise and experience on international trade and trade compliance. We also provide SBDC staff with professional development, increasing trade advising capabilities statewide. All of our services are free, customized, and 100% confidential. We help small and medium-sized companies become globally competitive by providing export development and import operations assistance through one-on-one trade consulting, market research, innovative training, and links to additional export resources provided by our partners, Global New York, the U.S. Commercial Service of the Department of Commerce, the Small Business Administration, Exim Bank, and other public and private organizations. The New York SBDC can help your business become a successful competitor in foreign markets by helping you plan and implement your export strategy. Our international business consultants are available to assist retailers, manufacturers, high technology, and even service companies with export planning and other areas such as export readiness reviews, export business plans, targeting international markets, selecting sales and distribution channels, legal considerations and licensing, logistic procedures and documentation, market research and trade statistics, and international financing options. It is easier than ever to get into the global marketplace. Many companies believe that the U.S. domestic market is big enough to meet their revenue goals, but the fact is that 95% of the world's buying power resides outside the U.S. Forward-thinking small and medium-sized businesses can tap into this buying power and grow their revenues through exporting. Each year, U.S. companies export well over $2 trillion of goods and services. Exporting works for companies of all sizes. 97% of exporters are small and medium-sized enterprises, and 67% of exporters have fewer than 20 employees. If you're successfully operating a business in the United States, you owe it to yourself to consider exporting. Many small businesses have products and services with international market appeal, but they are not certain on how to proceed. The New York SBDC is here to help. We invite you to contact one of our 20 centers and schedule a no-cost session with a New York SBDC certified global business professional and realize your exporting potential today. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker of today's webinar, Catherine Bamberger. Catherine is the International Trade Specialist for Empire State Development, responsible for assisting Northeastern New York manufacturers with both exporting and attracting foreign firms to establish manufacturers in New York. Prior to that, she was the International Trade Specialist with the New York Department of Agriculture and Markets for nearly 13 years. She has managed the New York Pavilion in dozens of national and international trade shows and has led several delegations and trade missions. Catherine has been the primary liaison between New York food producers and Food Export US Northeast, a membership organization of the 10 Northeast states. Food Export USA organizes activities to enhance and grow sales by conducting activities such as international buyer missions, trade show support, trade lead dissemination, market research, and more. Catherine earned an MBA at Sedge Graduate School and a BA in Spanish and Political Science with a concentration in International Relations from St. Lawrence University. Prior to joining the department, she worked in sales and marketing, domestic and international, in the publishing industry. Catherine is active in the Capital Region and has held positions with several organizations, including the Junior League, Red Cross, Albany City Schools, and Albany Youth Soccer. Please, Catherine, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you so much. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Thank you, Mercedes, for the lovely introduction, and Jenny for all your technical assistance. I'd like to also welcome my colleague from New York City, Antonio Rodriguez, who has been with the New York State Economic Development Organization for just over 30 years. He recently celebrated his anniversary. So congratulations, and thank you for all of your assistance and expertise. And he'll be helping to answer questions specifically about the STEP program, as he is the primary liaison and manager with the Small Business Administration. Next slide. So the Global New York team, formerly known as the International Division of Empire State Development, is the most international facing part of our organization. Our organization primarily looks at helping companies in New York State grow. We're also responsible for small business development, for minority and women-owned business certifications, and for making economic development regions around the state collaborate for developing plans, and the state is supporting those. But our division concentrates especially on working with New York State small businesses that are manufacturers and service providers with a tradable product. Typically that follows the Small Business Administration criteria, fewer than 500 employees. We also work with our partners to attract international businesses who would like to establish a location in the United States, and hoping that they would choose New York over other states. Next slide. As Mercedes mentioned, we do have representatives across the state. In addition to all of our team in New York City, we also have representation in Western New York and Buffalo, on Long Island, in Rochester, and myself in the Capital Region. Again, our stakeholders include some of the very same partners that Mercedes mentioned. We are members of the District Export Council, both upstate and Eastern New York. We work very closely with industry associations, chambers of commerce, and the manufacturing extension partnerships, both at the state level and at the local regional level. We do work very closely with all of the Small Business Development Center counselors and our partners at the U.S. Commercial Service Department of Commerce and SBA, as well as Ex-Im Bank. Again, some of the same facts, and in case you didn't catch them, we feel that these are important enough that we're going to mention them twice. The bulk of the growth potential for most companies, it resides outside of the United States. Over 37,000 companies in New York alone are already currently exporting, and 34,000 of them are small and medium-sized businesses. And a lot of companies that do consider exporting and work in tradable sectors find that the companies become the employer of choice. They tend to be more innovative, more flexible, and more forward-thinking. Next slide. Recently, we actually lost our number 3 position to be number 4, but as you can see, there's very little distinction. Number 1 and number 2 are far and away the largest exporters, and a lot of that is due to agricultural commodities. And then the next 7 or 8 of us are very closely aligned and have a little bit of back and forth. In New York, we actually benefit from being number 4 because some of the criteria that we have to meet only applies to the top 3. And so we're released from some of those other fund matching obligations by being number 4. So we're actually not too upset about that. And our next slide indicates these are the kinds of goods that are leading our numbers. Because our numbers through the Census Bureau are by dollar value, you can see where jewelry and arts and antiquity would be at the top of our list. And then also all kinds of machinery, metal fabrication, parts, optics and photonics, because we have some legacy organizations within the state of New York and then have then spun off. We have a number of companies that are continuing to export, and then plastics as well with and pharmaceutical products, again, with larger legacy companies that have been in New York for centuries. The country partners, probably also not much of a surprise, Canada being our closest neighbor, and with their biggest markets within just an hour or so drive from most of our a few hours drive from most of our upstate cities. Also English-speaking countries such as the United Kingdom and Israel. You see, obviously, are going to be some of our major trading partners, and Mexico as part of the North American Trade Agreement, now known as USMCA. And in light of that, we have representatives that we contract with around the world. Our offices are sometimes in single markets, such as Canada and Mexico, and then in Israel. We also have markets in Africa and South America and Europe that are managed from a single office, but have offices in multiple countries around the region. We also have newly added India to our portfolio and the Caribbean. At this point, if anybody has any questions about Global New York, we can pause for just a moment.
There don't appear to be any questions at this time, so carry on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So Global New York has 3 primary programs with which we engage companies. We also provide technical assistance, which is answering questions and helping to find information and providing data and statistics. And again, we work very closely with our partners at the Small Business Development Centers to make sure that companies are well prepared to launch into export marketing. One of the things that we offer is currently a free service, and that is the Export Marketing Assistance Service. We also have 2 funding programs, the State Trade Expansion Program, known as STEP, and the Global New York Fund Program. Next slide. Export marketing assistance, as I mentioned, is currently provided at no cost, and companies can choose 2 different countries each year. We actually have other circumstances where we can expand that if the circumstances allow for that. And the companies are provided with a market research report customized not only to the country itself, but also to the business, and discusses the market opportunities and also provides a list of potential partners, whether that be distributors or direct companies that they might work with, depending on the product and service. They will look at their domestic customer base, profile them, and then translate that into what it might look like in that particular market. Again, the company has to be in New York State, at least 1 year in business, and with 500 and fewer employees, and the product must be at least 51% value created within the state of New York in order to qualify for this program. And the next program is the STEP program. And that is one of the main reasons that we're here. It is funded through the U.S. Small Business Administration, which is also the sponsor of the Small Business Development Centers across the state and across the country, for that matter. We are now in our 11th year. And next slide, please. Currently, a company can apply for multiple activities up to $10,000 in reimbursement. The reimbursements are at a 60% reimbursement rate for eligible costs, and the companies would apply for these in advance of undertaking any of the activities. Next slide. So the kinds of things that you can receive reimbursement for is financial assistance awards for travel. So for example, in our EMAS service, once you have identified the potential partners you would like to work with, you could travel into that market and take advantage of an opportunity to visit their facilities, to meet them face to face, and to perhaps interact with them and be able to begin to develop a rapport. Where we don't have officers in foreign markets, we also work with the U.S. Commercial Service. They provide a very similar service, commonly known as a gold key, and that is also available for companies who wish to travel into those markets to follow up on the reports that are provided through the U.S. Commercial Service. They also have to charge a fee for that service, and that fee is also reimbursable. Should you choose to send any of your employees to training on export compliance or how to complete the paperwork that is necessary, or how to market and sell, anything that is related to the development of your employees to become more competent at export marketing and sales and logistics, any of those fees are also reimbursable through the STEP grant program. Our most popular category is the international or certain domestic trade shows. Anything that is held, any industry show or event that has an exhibition that is held outside of the United States is eligible for reimbursement, including travel and per diem rates for hotels. If it's a domestic trade show, we require that at least 25% of the buyer attendees who are coming into the U.S. for this industry exhibit come from outside of the United States. And we work together with the companies who are applying and with the show management to make sure we meet that criteria. Website content and foreign language translation is another category that is very popular. We actually have another webinar coming up at the end of this month on February 29th, where we have a website search engine optimization expert who will speak about how to design the website to make it more appealing to a foreign customer base. And again, that kind of work is reimbursable through the STEP grant program. Compliance testing, consultancy services around building export capacity and capabilities, and Ex-Im Bank's export insurance premium reimbursement are all eligible categories through the STEP grant program. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. So the STEP grant program is awarded on an annual basis at the federal fiscal level. That it means that it opens up typically each October, and 48 states, I believe, and a couple of territories compete for the available funding each year. And we have been very successful thanks to Antonio and the rest of our team who put together a proposal that actually has increased our funding from around $500,000 and $600,000 to this year $900,000. However, because we have a limited amount of funds, it is possible, and we are in that situation now, where we're in a waiting list situation where a company may apply for funding but not be able to be confirmed until later in the year. But once we have the application on file, we'll be able to review it, and then the companies will be on a waiting list for that funding. Similarly, the Global New York Grant Fund is a state-funded opportunity where companies can bundle some multiple activities in the same kinds of categories, as well as export compliance testing and certifications, where they can put together a program and apply for funding. They're reimbursed at a 50% rate, but the dollar amounts can be higher. Next slide. So for eligibility, in addition to companies, we also have eligible nonprofit organizations. And those are those that have assisted either through trade industries or economic development organizations, chambers of commerce, et cetera, who have worked with their memberships or they're with companies to access foreign markets and support their companies in those activities. They can also apply for this funding, whereas the STEP grant is specifically limited to small and medium-sized businesses. In this particular case, again, 51% product value must be added within the state of New York. The difference between that and the STEP grant is the STEP grant will allow for a company to have New York headquarters, but product value creation happening outside of New York, but within the United States. So there are a couple of nuances and differences between some of the different programs. This one is also temporarily on hold while we revisit the budget restrictions. But your trade managers that are assigned to your city, your region, your county we are the ones who will work through the nuances between the plans of what you would like to do, what your business needs, and what our programs have to offer. And it's our responsibility to figure out which is the best path and course for you to take. But there are some, just so you're aware that there are some differences between the programs. Next. In addition, we also brought our foreign officers around the state in June, and we had a great opportunity to meet with hundreds of companies around the state in person with our foreign representatives. And they were able to provide not only a market overview, but then one-on-one sessions to discuss the particulars for different businesses that were able to meet with them. Next. We also lead trade missions. Recently, we led a delegation for nanotechnology to Israel in March. There was also a delegation that went to Canada, and they were able, again, to not only meet with our representatives from our foreign office, but also people that they invited in. We did some one-on-one matchmaking and meetings to facilitate potential sales opportunities between the New York companies and the Canadian and Israeli importers. Next. We also led a group to Mexico in October and to India in November. And then next. And then the next, so we just finished Arab Health, which is in Dubai. Very interesting, very excellent show. And the nice thing about that is in Dubai, the visa restrictions that coming to the United States sometimes makes it difficult for companies to visit the United States and purchase from companies here. And in Dubai, the restrictions are a little bit different. And sometimes we will see companies from different countries that we wouldn't see here in the US or even in Europe. So that was a really interesting exhibition. We do have trade missions coming up for Taiwan and Japan. And we also have a couple of other, in the Caribbean in early 2025. We also have a couple of other exhibitions. Africa Health, similarly to Arab Health, focuses on the healthcare industry. The China Import-Export Expo in November. And then Trade Winds, which is a U.S. Commercial Service Department of Commerce activity, meeting with their foreign representatives, will be taking place in Turkey and Italy in May. So I think that is the end of the official presentation. We do have some time for questions, I believe.
Hello. All right. We have had a few questions. So if anyone does have questions, we are taking them through the Q&A box or the chat. So please get those questions into one of those locations so we can get them asked out loud. All right. So first of all, we had a question about exactly where agricultural exporting, specifically manufactured products, food products, ranks in New York State.
Where it ranks. So amongst the various products, our agricultural products We actually have apples, cabbage, and a few other items as our top agricultural products. For manufactured products, I'm not sure where it ranks. I know it's not in our top 10, but it is fairly high. And we have a lot of success stories. You know, as Mercedes mentioned as part of my bio, Food Export USA Northeast is based in Philadelphia and is a consortium of the 10 Northeast states. And they have a lot of very similar programs, both in terms of funding and in education. The products, like healthcare products and some others, are very highly regulated. And so it really depends a lot on the ingredients list, on the potential market. But we do have a number of successful companies that are exporting food and beverage products into other countries, and a lot of great stories, which I'm happy to share if we have time.
Okay, sounds good. What about educational services?
So educational services are not eligible. Companies providing, I should separate that out. Educational services for employees of companies that want to export is eligible under STEP, but companies who provide exporting services and colleges and universities are not eligible applicants.
Thank you. And if you could expand a bit more on some exportable services, we have an attendee who would like to know more about that.
Sure. So generally speaking, in the broadest of terms, services can be anything that are provided from a company that in New York to another organization that is billed and paid from outside of the country. Financial services is one. Architecture and design services is another. And that's the one that I like to use sort of as a differentiation. So an architect may design a facility or a building, but the building services are not an export because that's done domestically. That's done on site. So those are the kinds of things. Financial services is one. Legal services is actually not eligible as a promotional service. However, we do have companies that specialize in business organization, and so assisting companies that want to establish a presence in the United States and helping them navigate that as a business service rather than as a legal service.
Excellent. So if you have a for-profit business and a nonprofit business or entity, can both apply for grants separately?
So the nonprofit is only eligible for the Global New York Fund, and there must be a demonstration of experience and expertise in promoting businesses to export. So it's not any nonprofit; it's a very narrowly defined business support, export business support entity. They could both apply, but they could not apply for the same activity for the same participants. So for example, the 50% match for setting up an exhibit for a group of members at a particular event could not also be 50% from the other sister organization, if that helps to clarify it at all.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have a question also regarding patent protection if going into international trade. So what can you tell us about that?
It is very important. We actually have another webinar that we've done and will be doing again around this area. It varies greatly by product and country, and it's very specific. So it's the kind of thing that I would definitely recommend visiting the Small Business Development Center counselor nearest you, as well as contacting, if you already have legal representation, just asking them for their advisement as well.
Yes, Mercedes.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I just typed that exactly the same answer for that attendee. I would be more than happy to have a counseling session and provide the information that they need and advertise if Global New York has this kind of webinar, we will be also be broadcasting so everyone can participate.
Thank you. And I would love if you, Catherine, or Antonio could drop the link for that webinar at the end of the month with the about websites. That would be fantastic. I would love you to put that in the chat. I'm also going to drop this link here. So it is for a webinar that we have coming up in March with the USPTO on protecting your technology abroad. And so that might be of interest to our person who is wanting more information about patents and such. So I will drop that link just singly there into the chat.
I will have to share the website one in the follow-up email. I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, sounds good. We can put that in the follow-up email. Yeah, I know I didn't have it in front of me either and wanted to make sure we got to share it. So
for sure.
Okay, so if an architect does work in the US designing for a client in a foreign country, is that considered exporting?
It would be.
Excellent. So we have a question also about jewelry as a big item. Can you please talk more about that?
So obviously, arts and antiquities, as well as jewels themselves and finished products, have a high dollar value. So that's, even though they're not, we don't ship them by the container full of jewelry. In the same kinds of ways, their dollar value in exchanging is quite high, which is what gets them. So all of the jewelry manufacturers that are importing precious gemstones and then re-exporting them or vice versa, all of that is what makes those show up in our statistics because their dollar values are so high. So you have to sell, we don't have airplane manufacturers, for example, the way that some other states do. We have a lot of parts and pieces, and it's a lot of bottles of spaghetti sauce, and it's a lot of, door handles or nuts and bolts. That make up the same kind of thing that might be another bigger dollar value export. So an MRI machine or diamonds and rubies and emeralds, et cetera. So when they cross the border, they definitely hit that. The dollar value that's assigned to them is much higher than it is for a lot of other products. So that's what puts them pretty high up on the list.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. We have someone who is interested, I think a Canadian citizen, who wants to know more about food project financing. And so could you speak a bit more about that part of your presentation?
That's the kind of thing, it's very specific to the product and to the company that's coming in. We actually, when we attract foreign businesses, we provide a lot of technical assistance, but they're the grants and the funding are very standardized, not only for foreign companies, but the same thing that we would offer other companies that we're looking to locate in New York. So everything that we offer is standard financing, state financing, venture capital. There are some angel investors that are particularly interested in food and agriculture, particularly if it's a new kind of product. Or service. So it's a kind of question that's kind of difficult to answer generally, but happy to follow up afterward. Okay,
sounds good. We also have someone who's interested in cloth diapers as an export. Is this something, I think she's particularly interested in exporting to Canada. Is this something that would be eligible for your services?
So typically speaking, if it meets the content criteria, so that the cloth itself, the fabric, and or the value created in the sewing and packaging, et cetera, is 51% created in New York or in the US, then they would be eligible for the programs and services as well. We actually do have some companies that are in that business already. So we have a little bit of experience there.
And Yes, I have advised them to contact the local SBDC and request a counseling session because, as Catherine mentioned, there is quite a bit of more information involved in making a determination. An import per se without any content from the US is going to be very difficult to get any financing from Global New York. So we do need much more information on a one-on-one. So if this person will please, and everyone who has questions, contact the local SBDC, request a counseling session, and then we can follow up. I will follow up with them, but I also make a referral to Catherine. We were very close together.
Thank you. And as a reminder, all of our services at the NYSBDC are at no cost to you. We offer high quality, but no cost as a government funded program. We are able to do that. So we highly encourage you, get in touch with your local center. I dropped a link in the chat just a little bit ago on where you can get on our website and find the center, the location that is nearest to you. And then if you will go and sign up with that center will then work with Dr. Sanchez-Moore. So when you are working with your local center, you will also be working with Dr. Sanchez-Moore and have all of her wealth of knowledge at your disposal. So I just wanted to make that clear that we have no cost and you will have Dr. Sanchez-Moore. So it doesn't get much better than that. It's a good deal.
Thank you,
All
Jenny.
right. Well, I'm just giving you a little shout out because, you know, you have an amazing wealth of knowledge on international trade topics.
Thank
so
you.
I never cease to be amazed on the things that you know. So, all right.
So do my workmates here, my colleagues.
Yes,
we have
incredibly knowledgeable people on this webinar for you today.
Very knowledgeable, and I'm very happy to have them as partners. And as I said, we work very close together. We work with the same companies. We just try to help. We are here to help everyone as much as we can.
Right. And at the NYSBDC, we want to help prepare you for programs like ESD's STEP program. And so that is our goal, to get you to the right resources for your particular business and to have all the information that you need to be able to do this whole export thing the right way, because there is a great deal of detail involved in export. And we want to make sure that we help you dot all of your I's and cross all of your T's and be ready for all of the resources that can possibly be available to you. All right, we do have another question that's come in. Do you consider entertainment as exports, like music, books, and film?
That is a tricky one. Antonio, I don't know if you have any experience with this. I know, for example, we do have tourism that is, in general, tourism is not eligible for the STEP grant or the Global New York Fund, but individual venues who want to attract foreign visitors could possibly be eligible. As far as the export of books, music, literature, etc., I'm not really sure about that one.
Actually, it's all considered an export. If you are communicating with a foreign national or somebody is obtaining a product or a service that is from the US, that would be an export. Like you produce a movie here, but then it's watched elsewhere in Europe. That's an export of the US product, you know. I mean, they don't get the hard copy, but it's something that was produced here. Yes.
Right. That's why I'm sorry. And I was speaking specifically about eligibility for our programs because I don't believe licensing is.
I'm sorry. The eligibility, that's more difficult. That's very, yeah. That will be more difficult.
Yes, Antonio.
Right. So we do allow, in terms of entertainment production, in terms of activities, there are many companies that would like to, say, participate at an exhibit overseas to present their products to distributors. So as long as there is a measurable outcome in terms of export, that opportunity in terms of a transactional sale abroad, it's an export. We try as well to assure, because have to look at the objective of the STEP is to assist companies, eligible New York companies, with exporting activities. Well, we would really, truly as well appreciate and see that the company should advance in terms of domestic sale. Here, the main focus of the step is really for export. So while the company may have, say, production opportunities as well for distribution in the U.S., it has to make a clear distinction in terms of the objective of the initiative. So if it's a participation at a trade show abroad, that's fairly simple. In terms of like an overseas, maybe meeting, potential sales through some type of organization, third-party organization, we would allow for that as well. But it is basically on a case-by-case basis. We have to see basically what exactly are the plans, the scope of work of the company.
That makes sense. Thank you. Right. I'm not seeing...
Additionally, we do actually do work with some service providers in the industry as well. So people who are involved in production, set creation, that are doing work to support the entertainment industry versus the actual end product. Those are services exports, and those are things that we have supported in the past.
Excellent. Well, we'll give just a moment more to see if any more questions come in. But while we do that, I do want to remind everyone that you will get a follow-up email that will have a link to the recording of this session, as well as the slides that have been shared today, so you can come back and review all of this excellent information at your earliest convenience. Whenever you want to make sure about anything that you've learned today, you will have the resources to be able to do that. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. And there are many thanks coming in that this has been wonderful, very helpful, very informative. So I want to pass those along as well. So you know what? Let's open it up. We have a great suggestion from our attendee. Let's hear some success stories. You said you had some, so
I do.
Go ahead if anybody wants to stay with us for some of those. That would be
fantastic.
So
Particularly in the food and beverage sector, which is where I spent a lot of my career, we have had a company out of Brooklyn who was very famous for doing baked products, bagels and bialys in particular. And in the course of doing some of our activities, they came in touch with a company that was starting a bagel and coffee shop chain in Japan. And so they were able to sell par-baked New York City, Brooklyn bagels, but they did change some of the flavor profiles. And for many years, they were making the dough, parboiling and then freezing and sending them frozen to Japan to be baked on site in each of the cafes. And that was a story. But some of the flavor profiles were distinctly different than the ones. So they did not have sun-dried tomato, and cinnamon raisin for sure was not a thing. But they did have a lot of different fish profiled flavorings on their bagels that were extraordinarily popular. We also have another company that makes baked cheesecakes and things like that, fancy cakes. And they actually met someone who was, this is one of those stories that is not particularly replicable, but they met someone who was a friend of a friend who happened to work in the Beijing embassy. And so she invited them to a 4th of July celebration to send some products over. And the buyer for a major Chinese department store chain was at the embassy event. And for several years, they actually took one of their standard cheesecake products and stamped a lunar celebration design on the top and sold them into this department store for the Lunar New Year for many years. So it was a frozen product selling to Asia, dairy product, which for all intents and purposes and logic at the time was very, very unusual. But it was a very successful relationship. And what we find over and over again in exporting is that it's a business of relationships and it's a business of details. And it seems difficult and it seems daunting, and it seems like it takes a very long time to get results from activity to activity. But when it happens, it can really make the difference in whether a company increases their production to a point where the rest of their sales become more profitable, or it is one that is a lot of brand loyalty is developed in a lot of foreign markets because you've taken the effort to figure out all those details and to maintain those relationships. And so it really is a good business model for sure. Some other companies, we also had another company that did an environmental tech product that really helped transform a city in Japan that had some really significant soil and water contamination. And with the use of this product over the course of the year, they reduced their contaminants almost entirely from their soil and water, which that's the one that really is the one that sits in my heart.
Antonio, did you want to add any stories?
We've assisted really a number of companies in different industries. I think probably in terms of organization of events, we basically have conducted a series of trade shows, and these were basically, in some instances, new to export companies. So when you see basically those relationships being established, you see the outcome in terms of your efforts as well. And in terms of ranges of companies, from medical providers, jewelry, as you mentioned, many companies that sort of start with their own sort of operation in-house. Over a time period, you see their growth. And that in essence is sort of really a good example in terms of a project that we assist companies with, getting into exporting, as well as seeing those companies that are already exporting through the resources that are made available through the state, federal government. We basically, provide opportunities to expand, in terms of export sales, the opportunities for these companies to either go into as new entities or expanding their market and operations. So I think, probably have a good number of companies that have participated through the inception of the STEP grant. This is the sort of 11th year. We've assisted close to 1,000 companies, New York State companies, unique companies, with thousands of activities. This year alone, as Catherine mentioned, there has been a significant high demand for these resources. Unfortunately, it's a limited amount of funds we receive. We tried our best sort of to spread out in terms of opportunities in different sectors, different regions of the state. We try always to have companies as well, sort of have a regional representation. So we have a good balance in terms of the makeup of companies throughout New York State. So we try, for every sort of initiative that we sort of program, sort of to focus on that. Some may be like industry specific. So you may have a gathering, as an example, like in the Rochester Finger Lakes area with the photo optical electronics. It varies as well, the medical field and pharmaceutical, but we have a large range of companies we've assisted over the years, and we hope to continue doing so as well here in collaboration with the small business development centers.
Thank you. So we had a very good question come in, and maybe see if you can speak to this. I know it's a complicated topic, but this person is interested in building relationships overseas. Do you have some tips on when you're starting to look for and build these relationships? And then also, this person would like to know if there are specific countries that it would be best to focus on at this particular time. And I see that someone's hand is raised. I would love to have your question answered. If you will pop that in the Q&A or the chat, we will make sure to get it answered. So, all right, overseas relationships and which countries? Here we go.
I'll read that question, and then Catherine can also speak about it. It is a very broad question because it depends on the product. So there are products that have a market in different countries. So it has to be defined by what are you trying to export first. And with that, I will announce that it will be very interesting for this person to attend a webinar that we're going to have on March 20 about market research with the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service, because they are going to be highlighting also how to find the best market for your products. In regards to building relationships, well, attending trade shows, trade missions, but again, to get there, you first need to understand where there is a market for the product that you are trying to export.
Thank you. Catherine and Antonio, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you have a lot of, depending on the market sector, either your or product sector, depending on your industry associations, I would say if you can dedicate a person or two and some time to read your industry association publications, your international business publications, and subscribe to U.S. Commercial Service has some industry sector publications, as well as your local SBDC probably has a newsletter, and the Global New York newsletter. That's the way you can kind of keep track of all of the different opportunities and activities that happen. But really staying in tune with your industry association and with international business in general is a good way just to, if that's not something you're already doing, just to sort of acclimate yourself to different market conditions and things like that. But really, because the opportunities for countries and for products are so specific, the market research can tell you where things are already being sold, which is only one part of the story. The other part of the story is, if you have a product that is part of an infrastructure development, or it's part of some kind of consumer trend, looking for those other earlier indicators so that you can enter that market versus going where everybody else is already, your competitors are already going. That's where your counselors can really help make that discernible difference. The other thing, again, to put in a plug for our website webinar at the end of this month, is your website is your international presence. So where are you getting inquiries from? If you have a way of tracking the IP addresses, that's fine. But if you're actually getting inquiries and questions from people from certain countries, that's one of the easiest paths to follow.
Thank you. Antonio, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I agree with Mercedes and Catherine. And here it's important to, do your due diligence in terms of, resources that are available, first of all. So like the EMAS program would provide a good sort of opportunity to get that market research into the market that's available. If it's not among the countries that we basically have service in, look at the Department of Commerce for that type of resource. And again, considering that there's funding opportunity, this would lessen the cost of investment. It's very important to advance clearly in terms of your export plan in the market. It could save a lot of money, doing the due diligence up front, finding out that your product, there's no guarantee it's going to sell. So trying to maximize that opportunity with meeting the right distributors. And by that, distributors basically that will support you in the long term. Because we see as well, there may be instances where that relationship is really a short-term period. And sometimes there's conflict and very problematic. So you have to be very careful. And but there are opportunities there.
Thank you. So this person wants to know, how important are trade shows for learning about markets and making contacts?
So I've been in this business for longer than I care to admit out loud. And they've been decrying the demise of trade shows and events for decades. I think, again, it really depends on your industry sector and the products. If you have a really niche specific product that only a few people need, you could spend a lot of money on trade shows and not really target the people that you're interested in. But there is an association and a show for just about everything you can think of. So there are definitely great gathering points for people to come in from all different parts of the world. And that's where both Department of Commerce and Food Export are really good at organizing business to business matchmaking activities at some of these major industry shows. So again, I hate to keep answering every question with, well, it depends, but well, it depends. I think we have all learned through COVID, international sales and business was done a lot on this platform called Skype that someone may remember. The video conferencing platforms have just exploded through the pandemic. That definitely helps in terms of having a face-to-screen meeting is almost as good as face-to-face, but it's not the same. Particularly with new business ventures, being able, in a lot of cultures, being able to meet you in person, look you in the eye, shake your hand, or at least be in close proximity, depending. Those are the kinds of things that really do cement those relationships that we spoke of. And so, it depends.
So the moral of the story is get some help with your particular product or service so that we can direct you to the right resources. All right. I did find the link for that webinar on websites that is coming up at the end of the month. So I dropped that in the chat. Make sure to click on that really quick here if you are interested in that webinar. I think it will be some excellent information. So we highly recommend that you go snag that link out of the chat right now before we shut things down. And so while everybody does that, I want to say thank you so much to our fantastic presenter, Catherine, and to Mercedes and Antonio for also being here and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much to all of our attendees who have been here and been asking excellent questions. It's exciting as what we do. It's exciting to see your opportunities grow since we're all in this this area of helping small business owners. And so it is exciting to see the different things that people are looking at for their businesses in general, for exporting, and seeing how we can help you in reaching your goals. That's a very wonderful part of what we do. So again, thank you for being here. We do have an evaluation that will show when I shut down the webinar. So if you have a moment to answer those questions, we always very, very much appreciate your feedback and knowing what other topics you might be interested in coming up. And we hope to see you at an upcoming international trade webinar and at any of our many other webinars that we offer on all sorts of business topics. So check us out at nysbdc.org. And we have a training link there where it will take you to a list of all sorts of fantastic resources that the NYSBDC is offering. And we do appreciate our partner organizations like ESD so very much. And they have a wealth of opportunities that they are making available. So check out their website. And again, thank you for letting us be here to help you in your business journey. Any last words from our presenters and Mercedes and Antonio today?
Thank you both very much, Jenny and Mercedes. We really appreciate the invitation and value your partnership. Jenny, there's nothing like a well-run meeting and a well-run webinar. So kudos to you. You do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All
yes,
right.
Jenny, fantastic. She's always amazing in all the
Thank you.
all what she does. And I truly appreciate my partnership. Really, Catherine is. I consider her one of my best mates here in Albany, and also Antonio, of course, even though he is southern in New York City, but we do have a very good communication and we work very well together, and that's very pleasing, helping all the companies here in New York.
All right. Have a lovely rest of your day, everyone. And we will be with you shortly in a follow-up email. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.